So just as people are joining and filtering in here, we are going to have Anjali here, and I believe she just joined. Let me invite the guest of honor up, um, and we're gonna briefly go over her story. We're gonna assume that a lot of people know a lot about it. Um, Probably ask a few questions here or there. Um, I know that Anjali and I have talked about some people that may show up. Um, and then we'll get to a lot of listener questions, and hopefully it's a great time for everybody. And we'll probably start in just a couple minutes. But Anjali, just want to say hi. I know you're up here.
Hello, hello. Yeah, I think it's okay to give it a couple of minutes. And thank you very much, Brian, for inviting me and for hosting this. And I did hear from Jay Jess that she'll be here, so I'm really excited to have her help us out up here too, because she's always so pleasant and she knows how to run a room pretty well. So,
Exactly
yes.
right. And I had told Jay just earlier that please run the room as if you are the host, because I don't host a lot of these. I'm not as technologically capable. So she's going to be great.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, we'll just give it a couple of minutes and let people start trickling in and or keep trickling in, and when they stop, we'll get going. We could talk about our Sundays.
Yeah, in fact, Anjali, you and I had a phone call this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I got great vibes from that, and
Great.
you probably heard my kids yelling in the background, and
I did. I
yeah,
did. They do that. Yeah, they sounded like they wanted their dad pretty badly there at the end. So,
yeah, we tried to go out and ride bikes, but it started raining, so we had to come back in. But
mm, yeah.
all right, so we've got Jay Just here. Do you want to do an audio check, Jay Just, real quick, and just make sure everything's good?
Yep, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, perfect. Um, why don't we just give it one more minute, and then we'll get going if that's okay with you guys. So I'm inviting some speakers up right now, and there are some people that are in the speaker position. Um, just know that we're going to go over some things first, and then we'll open it up to everybody, like I was saying. So everybody will get a chance to speak at some point. And Jay, just if you could help coordinate some of that, that would be great. Um, Now, one thing that I'm not going to tolerate, and I know that Jay just does not tolerate, is any uh, disobedience, I shouldn't say disobedience, malbehavior towards anybody that's on here, whether it be our guests. I mean, you can yell at me or anything else, but anybody else, we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to drop you right back down and you'll be kicked out. So I just want to make that really clear. Besides that, I think we should fire away. And Anjali, if I may, just go ahead and jump in with something that we talked about earlier, that you obviously your background working for the DIA and the Pentagon and everything else, and you had an experience that you shared on Gaia intimately in the detail. So I would encourage anybody that wants to hear the whole story in detail to go on the Gaia. I think it's episode 1 of season 18, and go and look at that. But with that said, I played that episode for a trusted back chat of people that I've been um, conversing with for a couple of years. And there was only 7 of us, and 2 of them had never told me their story before. And they had a very visceral reaction that everything that you said and some of the drawings that the Gaia production crew did were exactly, I mean, with a few details here or there, exactly what they felt, and they had never, um, they did not want to share that with me or the rest of the group until you had come forward with that, until I played that episode for them. And I thought that was amazing. And I wonder how many more people have had the same type of experience with some of the same details that you were able to provide. And so I shared that with you this morning, and I wanted to share it with you and the audience again. And just if you kind of want to go into that and how it leads into your story.
Are we having issues? I don't hear anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep, yep, you're good.
Oh, good grief. I've been talking. Um, so let me go back. I would say that I am a lifetime experiencer, um, and that I feel like there are a set of a pattern of demographics and circumstances that I have been seeing um, across experiencers in general, like particular demographics that they may have genetically and biographically or autobiographically. Um, and so this wasn't something that I really knew um, prior to me coming forward with my 2018 experience that absolutely overhauled my entire life. There was a definitive before and after, you know, in every way. I just felt that the world that I had understood existing around me for all that time was not at all what it seemed. And my sense of my paradigm, my reality paradigm, just completely shattered. And so, without getting in, nitty gritty into the details, I'm open to taking questions, but there are certain topics that I would like to reserve for another time. Um, if everyone could understand that there are some details I'm going to skirt over. Okay, so I think that the most important part is that I went into a tunnel, and when I had been walking through this tunnel for several minutes. I mean, it was kind of a long walk. Um, uh, and for full disclosure, I want everyone to understand that I did have cannabis oil before I went in. I was a medical cannabis um, patient in California, and I met someone who had made what they call Rick Simpson oil. I was a daily and sometimes hourly committed user for of the of cannabis, of medical cannabis, after a spinal cord injury and an illness that landed me in ICU and in a physical rehabilitation hospital for 2 months. And so I already kind of knew that my former life was already like I felt a little bit like a tiny little boat out in the middle of the big ocean trying to figure out which direction to go. Can't see anything, just swallowed by the sea, because everything that I had ever done um, was behind me because of this illness. And so in 2017, I, like I said, I had previously had a lot of experiences in my life that we can go into at another time, but to try to circle around this culminating event. In 2017, while I had been in the hospital in ICU, I had a near-death experience. And so was, my world was already like um, permeated, I guess. Like I was, for several days, I was just lingering. I was getting some IVIG treatment. It's immunoglobulin therapy when your autoimmune system is attacking itself. Um, and and then I had meningitis at the time. Then I had drug-induced meningitis because of the therapy, the immunoglobulin therapy. I was allergic, not just reactive, allergic to one of the ingredients. And that ingredient happened to be in, it took them switching 2 times. It was the first time they switched, and I had another reaction. Um, I remember that that's when they identified, okay, because they were from 2 different manufacturers. I reacted to both, so they started hitting the ingredients hard because they shouldn't have really been an overlap, but they found it. I don't remember what it was, and it doesn't even matter because I can't have any more IVIG for the rest of my life. There's a limit on how many times you can receive IVIG treatment. So if I have any more autoimmune problems where they need to treat me with that, um, I have now hit hit the wall, and plasmapheresis is the only option that remains open to me. So here I'm having this, really high risk um, treatment and trying to reset my immune system, and I'm allergic to the ingredients. I max out how many times in a lifetime someone can have IVIG. And then I started having the near death experiences. Um, and they were, they really began ramped up, I should say. Like I was already feeling like I was between 2 places. I didn't feel like I was 100% present where I was. Um, but because of how ill I was, the doctors, my team of doctors, decided that I needed what's called a suprapubic catheter. And it's when they make an opening in your abdomen, and they use uh, it's called essentially a trocar. It pokes a hole into your bladder, um, and then they put a tube into your bladder, and you stop urinating because you have stopped urinating. That's usually when they do it, is when you are not able to urinate on your own. And my body was shutting down, and so I had been on a regular catheter for as long as I could be, and I was starting to get sick from it. I was urinating blood already because of the treatment I was receiving and my illness in general at the time, because it was really attacking my kidneys and my spinal cord. Um, I had blood in my spinal cord. We never knew where it came from, but because I was also having an autoimmune attack, essentially, they knew how to treat that, and um, so we did. And so here I am. I'm going to get the suprapubic catheter. And hold on, I need to take a drink.
Yeah, this sounds. th- th- I feel for you, Anjali. This could not have been fun.
Yeah, and I'm just trying what I want to demonstrate for everyone is how a altered state of consciousness opens us up to um, to contact with something else that may be presenting itself to us in many different ways. Um, and what I experienced was some severe trauma when they were placing that catheter. All they did was do right at the top of um, my pelvic area. You know, they gave me a local anesthetic. Okay, then he just starts going to town with this scalpel, and I'm telling him I can feel that, I can feel that, but I can't move. Okay, because of this spinal injury that I've got going on. Um, and my nurse is standing there holding my hand, and I'm I'm screaming, absolutely screaming at the top of my lungs and begging for help because they were driving that trocar through my bladder without any anesthetic. Like like I was already a dead piece of meat. I mean, how do you do that to any living thing? Um, and so the next time, like a few days later, they realized that they had to put in a larger trocar. And I don't remember anything after leaving my room on the bed to go to wherever I went, someplace in, nuclear science, or nuclear medicine. And so um, I I'm not sure if at that point I don't remember it because they anesthetized me, gave me something to go to sleep, or if it is because I had a total dissociation and just have repressed what's happened, you know. So so that was how 2017 started off, and then from there I started seeing, the classic I see dead people. Well, while in ICU, I was seeing people who were passing away, even in the ICU unit. Um, that's a little redundant, but um, even in the intensive care unit, when um, there were two people who passed away while I was there, that I can recall, and they both came to see me. The woman came to see me before any of her alarms went off, and I told my ICU nurse. Um, I had a nurse that was present 24 hours a day in my room, so that was the level of nursing care that I was getting at that point, um, and hooked up to just about everything you can think of. Oh, are we offline?
No, we're still online. Jay just for some reason got kicked out. And I think she got kicked out again. Uh, and I don't see
I
anybody
don't
else
see
besides me, you, and
anyone.
Robert.
Yeah, I think.
I I'm here
s-
still.
Okay.
This is going to be, all right, things are starting to
Yeah.
populate again. Um, so just so you know, some weird stuff happens when you get around me, I guess, Anjali, so I apologize.
No,
Um,
I'm sure it's X. X is notorious for this kind of thing. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, I can tell you some other stuff, but okay, it looks like everything's repopulating, and
awesome.
hopefully Jay just can get back on here in a second. But I mean, that sounds like a horrible, um, just harrowing story, and I I can feel for you because I've been through some of the same stuff. I'm not going to bore anybody with any of my medical stuff, but um, I that that rang a bell with me. Do you feel that when you had your out of body experience, that led you to meet, or that led you to what was going to happen later, that led you to your experiences?
I think it was like some type of level of conscious activation that happened. And I'm not saying like the pinnacle, but like, maybe we have a knob of that has 200 stations that we can turn it to, and maybe I just hit station 2, something like that. I don't know. Um, but I was definitely experiencing um, ab- abnormal and phenomenal things that had happened in my life when I was younger, but to a lesser degree. This was like I was getting keyed in to things. Uh, I guess I would say mentally, or consciously. I felt almost a I don't want to say a disillusion of self or a dissolving of self so much as a redefining of how I saw myself and everything else and the kind of paradigm that it was falling into. And so I had numerous not anomalous experiences that I won't bore you with, but in leading up to October, November, December timeframe, like there was about a 6 week time frame in there around the holidays, um, that in which I was experiencing a non-human being um, coming initially into my room and presenting itself and talking to me. And my daughter was there and was asking me questions that the being was answering. And it was a very intense experience. It was one of those experiences that I think some of you will understand this, that when you when you are in the presence of something that is truly um, different and significant, your eyes will begin to water. Has anyone here ever experienced that? Where you're not crying, you can be talking and seeing something and or walking and doing things, talking to each other, and you just can't stop it because you have that overwhelming sense of something else that's happening. Has anyone ever felt that?
Yeah, throw your hands up, or 100%. I'm seeing
Yeah.
a couple people do that in here.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just kind of curious if anyone else had experienced anything like that. So ha- I ended up the last, around the last 6 to 8 weeks. I don't remember exactly the time frame, just around the time, I was experiencing visitations by this being, in which I was seeing them inside of a craft, where they're standing in front of a window, and you can go to Gaia to see these illustrations. I have them, but I don't think I have the right to share them. I'm not really sure. Or else I would just pop them up there. But uh,
And
the
Anjali, just real quick, I thought those illustrations were great on Gaia. Do you think that they represented them pretty accurately?
I think that, things were, I think, accurate enough that it didn't really matter. the differences. For me, you know, uh, the placing of what I didn't know if it was a planet or a moon or what it was, um, in the background. It, you know, to me, it looked like Saturn. You know, that's what it looked like, and I didn't know how tall he was because you know he's presenting in my room, and in my backyard and all these places is like this, like about 4 foot tall and very lavender skinned. Um, I do have an illustration of my own illustration that I could probably dig up and post. Um, but I guess to make a long story short, so I've had these visitations. I'm trying to figure out what's happening to me. Okay. Um, and you know, as a former intelligence officer, I start asking all of the questions. Not only am I open to the idea that this could really be happening, okay, and that it is possible that my daughter was not able to see something that I was able to see. And I knew that that could either be a technological stimulation, okay, like a directed um, frequency, um, which in my mind made me question whether or not I was being targeted by any of the former intelligence countries that I may have pissed off in the past. You know, um, I don't know, but I was concerned about that. I was also concerned that I was perhaps part of an experiment that our own government was running, you know. But it felt in those moments, everything besides the fact that I'm looking at like this opening in the corner of my room that leads to somewhere else, and then there's a being that's communicating right directly into my mind. Um, Other than that, everything was normal. You know what I mean? Like there there were no I wasn't having any kind of geometric shapes or you know, any kind of rainbow effect um or fractal effect. Um Nothing was distorted, nothing looked out of the ordinary. It was like if I could look, if there was a window that was in the corner of my room, that somehow I'm looking at something that's how many millions of miles away, I have no idea. But it looks completely normal, like 100% physically normal and possible. That's what I was going through. So,
And and were there any other tactical smells or sounds or anything that were coming through that?
um, there was a there was definitely an introduction the first time that was like overwhelming me with love and compassion. And you know, I was I was sitting there. We were flipping through Netflix looking for a movie to watch. I was petting my cat, you know, and then it started like out of nowhere. And I've spent years going over all of that, and I've come up with everything that's happened to me. I can deduce down to two possibilities. Number one, it's all part of a lifelong project, like some kind of legacy program. Um, and I'm experiencing all of this through some type of technological interference with my brain, you know? Um, or it's happening, like it's all exactly like it says.
Yeah, and this is, before we invite a few other people up for questions, but th- that's going to be interesting because I want to get into consciousness a little bit too. But this takes you to the meeting in the coffee shop,
Right.
and
And
then
mhm,
eventually on to the Mojave Mountains, which, you know,
yes.
we don't have to get terribly in the weeds on that, but that was the one that really transformed you, at least from what I'm hearing. And you
Yeah,
can correct me if I'm wrong.
well,
Um,
what it did was um it gave me an entirely new experience. Um so without getting into any of the previous details, I'm in a tunnel. Um I'm walking through it. I'm using my phone, the flashlight. I'm Everything is normal. There's nothing weird that's going on, except that on my way to the tunnel, the purple being said hello again. And it was extremely overwhelming. Okay. Um, it, it would literally make me like just stop where I was and put my hands to my head, which is interesting. It, I don't, I don't know if it was a reflexive thing, because I was so astounded by what was happening, or if it was some kind of subtle or some kind of subtle thing that my body was picking up on, and I had this, you know, automatic physical reaction to throwing my hands over my head. But um, so that happened twice on the way to the tunnel. And then I find myself in the tunnel. Everything's normal. There's nothing weird going on, other than I'm being told that I'm about to go and meet aliens. And so there's a light ahead that um, that was like on the upper left corner, and reflecting essentially on that wall, but it was brightest up in the corner and then reflected down that wall. And I could tell that we were about to make a right turn, or that we were going to make a right turn ahead. As it was also being explained to me that it was going to be ahead, and that that light was coming from their base. Okay. So I have no idea still what I'm really about to get into. I know that I'm having contact with the being that has been only present at my home and has never like overlaid its face, um, and said hello to me when I'm doing something else. Like that's just never happened. So this is a first for me. And
and this is all unconscious telepathic contact. I don't mean to interrupt, but just
well,
so
it
everybody
was
knows.
conscious communication. I was
Or
very
excuse me,
aware.
conscious telepathic contact.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yes. The only reason I usually try to stay away from the idea of telepathic is because that is more. I feel like that comes from a egoic place of um, us having some kind of egoic attachment to the idea of being able to read somebody else's mind when it isn't like that. In fact, I I receive more than I probably ever transmit, at least consciously. Okay. Um, so definitely, I'm not doing any mind reading. I am participating in a conversation that is taking place at in at a level of consciousness where I know who all the players are and what they're saying, and they're talking to me. It's insane. It was insane. Okay, so we turn this corner, and the entryway into the facility that I went into. I'm going to explain that word choice in a little while. Um, there was like a seamless transition. So you've got this, Mojave Desert, Rocky Mountain kind of 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 cave, or of tunnel that we're dealing with lots of sand from the desert, and stepping into a really pristine environment. Um, and there were beings that were standing there. And one of them was a a small gray, um, that at the time I felt that the communication to me was from an actual place, but that it was only being projected through the android, almost like uh, like a robot, I guess you could say, where it's communicating to me, but it's not really. It's just the interface, that there's, for lack of a better image, but like there's somewhere else in this facility, there's somebody behind a desk who's got, looking through the camera at me through this being and is communicating to me. Okay. That's what it was like. Um, I felt that was an interface. Okay. Um, and they were greeting me and saying that they were glad to see me. They'd been wanting to see me, um, or wanted to come see me, or um, some of those details are getting fuzzy, but
Yeah, it's almost like they were expecting you.
or they wanted me to
The,
think that they were surprised to see me. See, that's I'm threat oriented sometimes, I have to feel protected, and so I know I seem like I'm just super lovey-dovey, and I am, but I am super skeptical. There's a lot of levels that I have to go through before I say to you guys, no, that is exactly what I experienced. What I'm telling you is exactly what happened. This was not this was not because of drugs. This was not an imagination. This is not a delusion. Um, you know, I I I had I had a full-blown total immersion material experience with this android, with the four tall whites that were standing there, and the fifth that would go back and forth, and the ones that I met in the big, like, operation theater or surgical theater that they took me into, um, where I met the purple being, um, and multiple.
and that purple being was the mantid, right, Anjali?
The
I don't mean to interrupt.
manted. It was, yeah,
Yeah.
so if we wanna just skip to that point, so I get into this room, they take me through there. By the way, this whole place is like, it's sterile as hell, which made me feel like I was in a hospital. It had all of the feelings of a hospital, but even more sterile, like maybe a military hospital that has the highest technology. Like you can't have any dust around, you can't, this place is immaculate, and there's no art on the wall, on any of the walls. We're, walking down this long hallway, there's no art, there's no expression of any kind of creativity. um, it's a very sterile environment, and I think that could be purposeful, so that there are no identifiable traits, you know, that you can use to describe where you may be. Like, imagine if there was this one particular painting that was on the wall, and um, and somehow, if I'm experiencing all of this through some kind of directed energy weapon, then you know I don't even know what to say. I'm just trying to keep all of my doors open. So
Yeah, that would be a
I
heck of a story to project through a directed energy weapon. I,
well, I don't see. I feel like we probably have the tech to do it. Um, but can I verify that? No, no. Um, I just think we're probably, 100 to 150 years ahead, technologically than what we see out in the consumer world, or what is even able to be known publicly through the military industrial complex stakeholders, all of them, name them, it doesn't matter, you know, um,
yeah,
through, heavily controlled SAPs and CAPs um, that are so highly compartmentalized that people within the SAP and CAP don't even entirely know what the other people are doing. I sorry to kind of get off on a tangent here, but this has been a long time coming. I have always felt like if you're looking for uh, crash retrieval materials and potentially, you know, bodies and beings, both deceased and alive, being recovered, non-human bodies. If you're looking for that and you're looking for the craft, you definitely are not going to find that at the place that everybody says it's at. And you're probably not even going to find them necessarily at the same place. Um, they may be in the same area, probably connected to different facilities through a network of underground tunnels that have been constructed for this purpose that can lead from one area, for hundreds of miles, and you come out somewhere else, and you're, literally at a different base and in a different facility, but you're easily moved from one place to another without anybody being able to see you. And not just, small things, these tunnels are large enough to move, planes through. And there are there are hangars that are rumored to be connected to these underground massive tunnel systems where they can actually even move aircraft and materials from one place to another, and large trucks when they're carrying objects from one place to another without ever being detected by the public. And honestly, the desert is the perfect place to do it. There's already such a low population density that you're mostly undiscoverable in the first place, and then you add that second layer to it, and yeah, nobody will know what you're doing.
yeah. I've heard something similar, that these construction companies too. If I could add on to that,
Mm.
that when they're building these, that they can use certain laser technology to literally melt the rock and seal it in place, and so they can dig their tunnels very quickly. Um, with
Incredible.
the with this technology, and you can literally like, carve it out. And if you've ever been in a cave before, you know how the cave's kind of got that smooth limestone look to it. It
Yeah.
it it it's got that same feeling once they're done.
Mm.
Um, that they can literally just heat it up and melt it and just burn right through it.
Incredible.
I've not been under there. These are a few things I've heard from a couple different sources. Um,
Mhm.
so that
Mhm.
would make sense, and perhaps that technology was derived from somewhere else. I don't know. But if I could for a brief moment, Anjali, just put you back in
Sure.
that room.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
you know, no, you're great. Um, I, you know, you're on the examination table or anything else. And I remember you saying in one of your previous interviews that there's almost a viewing room there, and you had thought that who do you think is behind there? I know you didn't see him, but who you thought? And you thought, well, it's humans. And so
Yeah, absolutely.
I always found that fascinating. So do you know, or do you think, or are you convinced that part of the human population is working in conjunction with these beings?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, and can
Um,
I go further than the person that led you there that you met at the coffee shop, the construction worker that dug the hole into there? Um, did the government come and try and find that area? Did they try and meet that guy? What do you know? What happened after that? Did they find? I think his name was Brian, no relation to me, by the way.
yeah, that's
So
as far as like any details about those the property owners, I don't really want to get into that. I can tell you that to my knowledge, um, they they had initially they there had been some talk about um, they were claiming that people were coming to their home and you know that somebody had asked them questions, um, and my understanding is that that has been rescinded, and they're saying that they were not contacted. Um, so, from my point of view, and I know that this is going to be hard for people to swallow, but I suspect that they probably were contacted by someone who works in intelligence, and they would not have known. But as far as whether or not um, there was any kind of assignment to fly over the home, fly over the property, to do some MASENT, uh, some lidar scanning and overhead scanning, thermal scanning, to see if there is anything physically within the mountain. I don't know. I don't have access to any of that, but that would not require any sort of involvement from the property owners. They have absolutely, no recourse of action. So they probably wouldn't be told about it, and neither would I. Um, I'm assuming that they would do their due diligence. I mean, I'm not just S you know, I I don't know how to say this. I don't wanna say I'm not just someone off the street, and I don't mean that in terms of, I'm, better than anyone else. What I mean is I had an extremely high security clearance, um, and I worked with incredibly sensitive intelligence, and including strategic intelligence and human intelligence. Um, and I knew, um, let's see, what am I trying to say? So basically, all I'm trying to say is that um, because of how high my clearance was, the definite faith that leadership of the agency and of the Pentagon showed in me, to the point of having me come over to the Pentagon to work for the Office of the Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in J2, J3. So I bring this up just to say, like when I went to Washington and I gave my press conference, like everyone that I ever knew and all of Intel knew that I was talking to them and that I was talking to DC leadership. I mean, they understood. Um, and it was it was a moment where I understood that I wasn't just a regular American citizen. I had a very specific background that lended more credibility to my word and to the efficacy of what I recall that I knew it would hit home. And,
Yeah,
you know,
if I could boast your bona fides for a second, Anjali, because I know it's hard to talk highly about yourself, and I appreciate the humility. But yes, I mean your XDIA, just like you said, high classification. But a lot of what you said caught the eyes and ears of AFOSI, for example. I mean, you had not only overt but covert agents coming to talk to you. And so there's little details. I'll just give one example. If you talk about the illuminated mist that was coming down into you on the table, that's one of the things that probably caught their eye a little bit. But there's other details in there too. So yes, we wouldn't be having Anjali on here if she was not the real deal. So I just want to express that to everybody. Um, i- if I could just do one more question with you, Anjali, and this is just a
oh, yeah.
personal one, and then we'll open it up to everybody else that wants to come up for questions. So you guys can start requesting, and Jay Just will let you up accordingly.
And
Um,
we don't have, the questions do not need to be centered around what we've already discussed. As long as they're questions in good faith or just even comments, or if you want to share something that's happened to you that you can relate with and you've been kind of following my my journey these last few years, come on up.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we want to make it a good space for everybody. Um, this this came from last night. Like I said, I was playing your Gaia interview for seven other people. I don't know if I should be doing that or not, but we did.
Oh,
And
I wouldn't admit that.
I know. But I'm trying to promote Guy here. It's a great channel, so everybody should go look at it. Um, but one of these questions came from the two people that had a very visceral reaction to what you were saying. I mean, I can't tell you how visceral it was, but they would like you, as best you can, to describe the uh, the mantid, as best as possible. Color, texture, smell, and I just want to see if any of it lines up with what they were saying. I'm not trying to put you to a test, but if you remember anything about the mantid at all, um,
Oh, oh yeah. I remember a lot about the mantid. Um, it's funny what I can't remember, I think is one of the things that might be really important. Um, the two things that I can't remember, and that is their hands and their feet. We're talking about a mantid being that was humanoid in structure, okay? That I believe makes up the majority of what people call insectoids. And I could be wrong. Maybe I'm misinformed, and there are a lot of other forms of insectoids that people face. But I think the only one that I hear about repeatedly is, I guess we could throw the Mothman in there, which was a one-off in the '60s, um, and then mantids. I guess there are ant people, but we don't hear about them on a daily, like people still communicating with them. But they're very important to the historical record of indigenous people. Um, so, what was your question?
sorry, no. In your encounter, what did yours look like?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
If you could give as in-depth description as possible.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
said, I'm not
Okay.
putting you to test with other people's
Nope.
experiences, but the fact that they shared a very similar experience to you, I'm curious to know. I guess you can call this is not a double-blind study, but a blind study.
Hmm.
Um, it may or may not line up because I do believe that it's all about consciousness and excuse me, that a lot of these beings perhaps are putting on a suit, a human suit, or a tall white suit,
Mm.
or anything else. And I think that that's a possibility. But I'd be curious to know what your mantid looked like, felt like, what's anything tactical, descriptional wise that you could provide.
Right. Right. Okay. Let's see. Oh, so my previous experience with the being was, I would have described them about 4 foot tall, humanoid, lavenderish to purple. You know, you got your darker and your lighter areas of features, and um, uh, a a large bulbous head, um, a bulbous almond eyes that protrude slightly from the head. Um, Barely anything noticeable for a mouth or nose. It was more like a couple of small slits, like parallel slits for nostrils. You know, it wasn't anything really remarkable that I remember. Um, so that's how it was appearing to me, with all the conscious contact I had had up until this point when I was inside this facility. Um, that I still think was inside of a base or could have been inside of a craft. I don't know. I felt like I was underground. I got there through the underground. I'm going to just assume I was in the underground. But when you step into a place like that, who knows what's actually happening, you know? So when I first saw them, they were on the other side of the door. The door had just opened, and they kind of leaned down and looked at me. And I saw what they really were, which was a 7 to 8 foot tall, um, humanoid, manted being that still had the large bulbous eyes. The head was very much like I remember, but the chin was sharper. Um, and so its face was, even though its head was bulbous, its face wasn't big. You know what I'm saying? It's like the brain area was just bigger or something. I don't know. Um, I don't know what's in there. So, um, and the exterior was, now that you've asked it, nobody's ever asked me this before. It was dry, like it did not appear shiny or wet in any way, or like dewy or gooey.
I can't believe you just said that. So that's the exact opposite. This person said, and I've got it written down right here last night, almost shiny with a wet, slimy look. So
Interesting.
I can't believe you use those adjectives,
Isn't that
and that you
interesting?
both got the exact opposite.
Hmm.
Um,
But I didn't touch
so
them.
anyways,
That's why I'm only telling you what I
yeah,
visually saw. They, I don't
yeah,
remember physical contact. I feel like everything was like a non-touch checkup, and treatment. Touch free.
yeah, no, and I'm not saying one person's right or
Yeah.
wrong. I just found this amazing
Yeah, that is.
that
That
you
is.
use those exact words, the shiny and the wet
That is
look.
really
That's
interesting.
exactly what I
Like,
have
is
written
that,
down. The only other thing I have, yeah,
I just wonder if
go ahead.
that's like a cover memory, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have no
yeah,
idea.
correct. The only other thing I have written down from this is that he was wearing a robe that was partially open.
Mm,
Anyways, um,
mm.
I think if it's okay with you,
Hmm.
Anjali, if we want to start bringing some people up to ask questions,
Yeah.
and they can stop listening to me yap, if that's all right.
Oh,
Jay, Josh, do you want to handle some of that,
Yeah, I
as
don't
far as
see
bringing
anyone
people up?
requesting. I mean, if people want, the people who did request before are known agitators, so I removed them.
mm, got it.
Go ahead.
Well,
Yeah, it looks like Robert's got his hand up first. Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, Anjali. Thank you
hi.
for joining us here today. A few days ago in a recent X Space, I asked John Ramirez if he was aware of a CIA time travel program and he said he was aware of a compartment that might have dealt with that aspect of technology reverse engineered from non-human intelligence, but he couldn't discuss the alleged program known as Marvel or even acknowledge its existence. He added that anyone read into such a program wouldn't be able to talk about it and encouraged listeners to interpret his comments as they wish. Later that day, Brian asked Rick Doty the same question in another X space, and Doty claimed that he worked on Project Marvel at Sandia National Laboratories. He described it as a 1970s era program focused on time manipulation, which later spawned into a number of offshoots. He also hinted that the names of some related programs involved the letter M, but didn't elaborate. Do you have any further insight into this or related programs? And do you think such technologies could ever be released to the public due to their potential effects on society?
Well, I don't really know what the potential effects would be on society. I do want to say real quick that I just posted in this space. I think I did. I think I hit the post button. Um, a a sketch that I did of the purple mantid, who first appeared to me in 2018. I would say that this sketch that I've done here is more what I saw in in 2018, in person.
Hallelujah.
Do you see it?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Hi, Polymath. How are you? Sorry if that was really fast. I got excited.
Was there? Oh, okay. Um, so I posted that in the space. If anybody can see it, if you can't, let me know, and I might have to try it again. Um, so I became aware of a program named Marvel in early 2022, and um, it has since been a topic of discussion that because other people have mentioned it. I don't know if they're referencing um, like people who are asking questions and looking into it are referencing, that I said something, or if this is all just emerging independently, which I think it would be, fascinating if that's what's happening. Where, just emergently we're all talking about this and information is coming out. Um, so my understanding was that Marvel was the time travel program. It is no longer called Marvel. Why? Because we're talking about it. So
Fair enough.
it's it's done. It's going to be sealed, for who knows how long. And they have deniability. There is no program. We have no program, you know.
That was an
So,
extremely diplomatic way of sharing that information. Thank you.
well, thank you.
Hey, Kenneth, do me a favor, raise your hand. We're going to try and keep it as civil as possible here.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a question for Anjali?
I do.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead, far away.
Where do you get your hair done?
I do it myself.
Ah, that explains a lot. Thanks.
That's don't know how to take that.
He's been removed.
And drop down.
What a dingaling.
That, that,
I
that
like
was
my
as quick as
hair.
my fat fingers can do it. Yeah. So Anjali, going back to that room that you walked into and you said there were 20, 30, 40 beings somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of what those beings look like? Have you ever attempted to draw any of them or do anything like that?
Um, okay, let me see if this posted. Did it? Uh, oh, it must have. Yes, okay. Um, okay. So I'm sorry. Can I describe them? Okay, so if you've seen the mantid um, drawing that I've done, and if you haven't, you can look at it now. Um, there were beings of all of the beings that I saw were humanoid. Everything that I saw was humanoid. Okay, even the mantid was humanoid. Um, it was, it had, it stood erect. I don't remember what its feet looked like. I know, how thin the legs were. I remember what the arms looked like. I do not remember ever seeing the hands. Um, I've, I've got the chest and the throat. If you take that basic format with, the arms might be a little different, and you change the shapes of the head and imagine colors, such as tannish orange, um, um, ochre, um, light blue, like, uh, there's no other way to say that. Light blue, um, multiple. I was aware when I was looking at them, even though I'm seeing, all of them at once, there was an individuality about them, meaning I felt like they were all representatives, like they were all um, like an example of another race of beings that's out there. Okay. Um, and they were like each individually representing something. They were very diverse. They were diverse. And that's the best that I can say. There were some humans that were in the room, um, and there were tall whites that were in the room. So you can imagine I'm seeing a lot of stuff. It's a lot is happening, right? Like visually and mentally right now. I'm going through the ringer. I'm seeing so many different types of what I would consider non-human, humanoid intelligence, um, that I've never seen before. I'm seeing humans among them that are also there to be examined, I'm assuming, Um, and I'm interacting with a limited number that are right around me, although there was a lot of observation. So then I noticed the observation windows at the top of the theater. And I hope you guys know what a surgical theater is. So that's because that's what it kind of looked like. And it was, a round room with a tall ceiling and these large windows that came across one wall that I knew that there was somebody back there. And I thought, as I'm in there, well, if all of this is happening, what could possibly be behind that window that can't show its face? And I just thought maybe military, maybe scientists, um, normal human beings that are working with this in some way, that don't want to be recognized. I mean, what else could it be? I just can't even imagine at that point with all that was happening around me. I logically just have come to that conclusion. So I felt that there was some type of um, joint effort going on that American officials, in some capacity, American officials were aware of and part of. And if they couldn't control it, they were certainly observing it.
Yeah, that's I think the way I'm leaning to. Hopefully more people come out about that type of contact and cooperation
Mm-hmm.
between the NHOs.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Jay Jess, you don't have to raise your hand. You can just talk, Jay Jess. Fire away.
So I'm just curious, for those who don't know, what did you say when you came out, like to the press? Because I'm one of the people that have it, like I don't know. Was there a message that you came out with?
um, I I haven't watched it in a few years, so I can't say for certain exactly what was said. I can tell you that I can kind of reiterate what still remember. Um, I did not go with a prepared speech. The I was told um, that I would not fully channel, as in, I'm not the one delivering the message, but that I would like translate the message essentially, and they would tell me what to say, and that I didn't need to worry about it. And I was dreadfully worried about it. It was like it terrified me. I thought, I'm always so prepared. How in the world am I supposed to go into this? And they were just saying, well, you are prepared. And how am I prepared? Well, the fact that we have this entanglement now, that we've had since I went into that facility in 2018 and again in 2019. I they were just already ready at any time, and all I had to do was do my best to listen well and to, in good faith, repeat or translate to the best of my ability, and which is very difficult. Um, very, very difficult because you're not just dealing with speaking, to this other kind of consciousness in a different kind of way. But I think that in general, experiencers deal with this where we tend to speak a different language than non-experiencers. Really, we have this different worldview than non-experiencers. And I don't necessarily mean, if you've been outside and you think you've seen a UFO or a UAP. I'm talking about having conscious contact with a non-human intelligence, or perhaps an advanced human intelligence, an ultra human intelligence. I don't really know. I don't know. I can just tell you what they explain and try to do the best of my ability to be correct and honest with that. So, um, when you don't have a shared experience, I think it makes it a lot more difficult to understand, even if you're using the same language. And now what you have with an experiencer is that you have some other kind of conscious communication that's happening to you, and you're translating it from this very temporal liminal space, and into a spoken language, um, and written words that you hope you have the vocabulary to capture, and to be accurate, because it's very different. It's I don't know how to explain it. So I think that in some ways the experiencers really kind of speak their own language, because there's a lot of conscious communication that's going on, and some are aware of it at different levels. So essentially, what I did that day was I went prepared to do what I was told, and that's what I did. And so even as I'm doing it, I'm thinking to myself, I'm hearing all this, I'm seeing it, I'm explaining it, I'm answering questions, I'm fielding questions, I'm like unveiling my identity completely, like just lacerated it, and saying words that I knew were going to be very difficult to explain. Um, and I felt like I didn't really have the vocabulary for it all. So I had to do a lot of approximation. And so essentially, the bread and butter of it is that they are preparing us consciously for more widespread contact and experiences, that is directly related to the end of a cycle of birth and rebirth. So, some people tell me, oh, well, we're coming up to this 13,000 year um, cycle. And then, somebody else will say, oh, but what about that 26,000 year cycle? Oh, yeah, the 26. So it's like these cycles within cycles, and so um, I'm I'm trying to understand what they're telling me, but they're telling me to say, um, we are that they know who created us, that they did not create us, but that they are guardians of this world of humans, and like they have like guardianship over us and over the planet, and over who is allowed to interact with us and who isn't. And there are races that violate that, and they've been um, kind of just overseeing this this experiment of putting consciousness um, inside of this this particular body structure, and like growing a consciousness awareness, growing a soul, um, um, overcoming limitations of the body, finding the limitations of the body. So sometimes it's not even about overcoming it. It's just about recognizing that there are abilities within us that are dormant and unlocked that we can unlock. And yogis and mystics and shamans, they've been telling us since the dawn of time how to unlock those mysteries and to tap in to our larger community of consciousness, and the larger community of beings that we actually interact with. I see you. I see you, Brian.
Oh, no, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to bring up that I've had the opportunity to interview Stan Deyo on a Twitter space. I also do part of my own
Mm,
research with John Stewart and the Victor alien interview, and Victor brings up Le Deluge de Solaire. John Stewart also talks about the sun, and we hear you talking about plate tectonics and stuff like that.
mm.
I would just be curious, is there anything in your official government capacity? I mean, how serious are they taking this stuff? Is there is there something that they know? We've obviously got John Ramirez 2027 remote viewing stuff that he's heard. Um, um,
I feel pretty
where do you
confident.
stand on
Yeah,
that?
I feel pretty
Yeah.
confident that the 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 state that our solar system is in currently, and the stability of Earth's magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, I think that that is probably part of a um, I would say like a um, let's see, maybe 3 times a week, a meeting that may be held 2, 3 times a week, where there's a working group that's giving the latest and greatest intel that we have, and analysis that we have, to try to understand the situation so that we can be prepared on at least a national security level to mitigate potential threats and harms to the planet and to the security of the United States and their interests. So I don't know, does that answer your question at all?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And if I could do a follow-up, I know that Steve came up, and
Yeah.
everybody probably wants to hear from Steve. So, but when they when they have these meetings, and I think that's spectacular news, are part of these underground bases or anything that they're doing as far as the preparedness? Do you think that could be part of it?
Well, I have noticed in the last several years a dramatic uptick in boring activity. I can just, kind of speak to that, and, I can do some pontificating on what it may mean. But my understanding is that there is a subterranean effort to prepare the United States to survive through and be ready and prepared for a national catastrophe so that they can have continuity of government, continuity of science and education and history, that they pass forward. So, and I understand that there are a lot of underground tunnels and networks of tunnels that are, um, surprisingly seem to be located in many different places that, um, that we wouldn't necessarily expect it. Um, so, uh, yeah, I have already forgotten the question. I hope I did any justice.
No,
Okay.
no, that was absolutely right on.
Okay.
I didn't know if Steve wanted to jump in here.
Hey.
I know you may have heard of Steve before, Anjali.
No, I've never heard of that guy.
I know he doesn't have his hand up. Maybe he can't talk right now, but
Oh, maybe.
so if you want to ask a question, Steve, or anything else, just feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, you get me, Anjali.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, that's great. That's great.
He may be busy.
Yeah, he's probably just listening.
Um,
It's fine.
well, he actually went up to the speakership here, so maybe he'll be ready in a second. Um, have you tried to, after the fact, tried to make recontact with any of the beings that, or have you made recontact with any of the beings that you had the encounter with?
Yes, they one of the things that they told me when I was on that medical examination table and they had removed my consciousness and I'm outside of my body, the mantid is looking up at me. So I'm like, um, if we're if we're all just whatever wherever you're sitting right now, put yourself in a block and you're the you're me on the table. I would be up to um your left and towards maybe, maybe like 4 or 5, well, no, it would have had to been 7 or 8, 9 feet maybe up because I was looking down at the face of the mantid that was turned around and looking at me and talking directly into my head while simultaneously having a conversation with the other being who was actually involved in the examination and who was paying attention to whatever was going on under the white mist, the mist that is like light. It's like illuminated mist. And it was giving them information. They were getting information from this, or it was treating me in some way. Um, I don't really understand, but I felt like it was being used diagnostically and that it was being used for healing, that it was really therapeutic as well as diagnostic, I guess is the way I'm trying to say it. And they told me then that that we were essentially entangled now, that no matter what distance between us, they would be able to communicate with me and I could reach out to them and they would respond because there's always watching and listening. And so it's just like it's almost like they're telling me that, like they told me, we're just a thought away because that's how easy it is now. Like there's something that had changed where we had a deeper connection than we did before. And so I have experienced a lot of what I call conscious communication, which is how I'm understanding what they're explaining about the mechanisms behind how it happens, Um, and the basics of it is it's direct consciousness to consciousness. The more in-depth explanation has to do something with quantum microtubules and who are actually alive and they're pressing little numbers of on and off and yes and no and I don't know what all they're doing, but they seem to congregate and work together and suddenly I'm having a discussion with a non-human being who's apparently um, recently has been on a moon of Saturn, and their craft is hidden in the rings. Um, yeah, they're like hidden. They're showing me like a debris. They're just kind of floating in there with it. And so that's where they're at right now. But so we're able to communicate. And I do have experience with getting their attention, but it's almost like when I'm trying to communicate with them and I'm trying to like form a thought and tell them, they already know. So it's like they're already answering me before I've even formulated my thought. And I find that really fascinating. Um, it, it implies to me that they're working at a speed of thought that I am not consciously maybe tapped into, or maybe I'm not able to, physically or quantumly tap into, but they're on it. It's like, they're already answering me and I'm still fumbling around like a silly human trying to figure out how to make my intentions known. They already know. They know my intentions. They know my every thought. So,
Yeah, that's going to remind me of a question later. Absolutely fascinating. But we've got Doomer Daddy here with his hand up, and great spaces.
Doomer.
Sometimes Doomer and Daddy love it.
I
So
love
fire
him.
away, sir.
Oh,
Hi,
thanks.
Ulrich.
Hey, how's it going, Anjali? And hey to everybody else
Great
on
to see
stage.
you.
Um, yeah, Brian, and sorry if I'm going back here a little bit, but the question you asked about, is the government prepared? Um, there's a difference between continuity of government when it's pushed to the very max and irregular national
Absolutely.
security and martial law, right? And so, like, if you have national security light or martial law light, then it's what we imagine, right? When there's an infrastructure collapse that's temporary, but at its max, continuity of government is the breakage of government. It means government is
That's
no
right.
longer here to protect the citizen. It's
That's right.
just there to protect the government, right?
That's
And
right.
so the more
So that the citizenry can continue because they believe themselves to be in a situation where they can only do what they can do. That is what they have decided. We can
right,
only
right.
do what we can do, and this is all we can do. All we can do is, we'll plan for continuity of government and continuity of society, but not for every citizen that's
Yeah.
on the surface of the planet. That's right.
Right. So at its most extreme, Brian, the more serious government, in quotes, takes an extinction level event, the more counterintelligence is part of the protocols, the more it's going to be required that the majority of the citizenry does not know that they've been deselected for survival. The more serious government takes it, the more counterintelligence is required as part of the protocols. The more you won't know about it, and the more your protection isn't being considered, the more serious the government is taking it. And so we don't know about this. And I agree with Anjali. The government takes this very seriously.
Absolutely. That was more of a statement than a question, but that's cool. That's cool. It was right on.
Well, I mean, it's
Yeah,
important
it's right
because
on topic.
it's not national security anymore, right? Continuity of government at its extreme is almost the opposite of national security. And I think that's where language really matters, because we're wondering why, what the disclosure dance is here, and I think the
How is
disclosure.
how is continuity of government not um I don't understand. Can you
Yeah,
restate?
yeah. So I mean, national security means you do what's in the interest of the collective, of the most amount of people. But at its extreme, you have.
No, that's not what national security
Well, for
is.
the nation, right? You put the nation. I'm saying when you call something a government or you call something a nation, it's defined by relationships, a constitution. People are assuming the government is protecting their people, they're paying their taxes in exchange for their protection. And all of these relationships no longer comprise the decision-making factors. This relationship no longer exists. And
That's why it's called continuity of government. Exactly.
exactly.
Because in the end, the United States of America can reemerge, after whatever is happening that they feel like they need to be preparing for it. They can
Right.
reemerge and take all the previous knowledge
Exactly.
with them and
That's why I'm
rebuild
saying
society. So
that's exactly right. That's
what's
why
dispensable and what isn't is really what
right.
it comes down to. We've got a limited amount of space, and we're not prepared to do what we would need to do in order to make all of the space available so that we could take every American citizen underground. There's just, I don't know how that would even happen at this point,
Right. So, but when people
Yeah.
hear national security, they're thinking the nation as a whole. What does it take? It's utilitarian. When people think of continuity of
That's not
government,
what I think of at all when I
right,
hear national security. That is not
right.
what I think of.
But
Yeah.
but but the concept is fairly simple. What I'm trying to say, is if we have
Okay.
a pie with 100 pieces, we would assume that when something is done in the interest of national security or continuity of government, what most people think is that you prioritize the larger number of the pie. And in extreme extinction events, that is not the thinking that goes on. You're just trying to preserve the species, and it is less so about the preservation of the nation. And that's what people need to be clear about, right? Like so it's not continuity of government. It's continuity of somebody else's government. It's not continuity of your government. It's continuity of your government for other people. And I think that distinction matters.
Well, it does address continuity of species, yet it is under the control, direction, and decision making of the national security decision making structure.
Right. But
So
when your
yeah,
nation isn't acting in your interest, people should know.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think Jay just has their hand up, and then Alien Protocols had his hand up for a bit. Now, just a heads up, everybody. I think we're having problems with people asking to speak. So I don't know what's going on with uh, X today, because there's people that have said that they've tried to ask to speak and we can't bring them up. So I want to really apologize for that. I don't know what's going on. But Jay, just if you want to go ahead, then Alien Protocol.
Okay, so this is a question from the audience. Um, if you can you ask Anjali a question? Could you please ask her to give a longer explanation for what Project Marvel was doing?
Well, I don't know what Project Marvel is doing. I couldn't tell you any of their activities. I can tell you what I believe they are engaged in, which is they're experimenting with time travel technology and perhaps have information that has led them to a point where they are able to use that technology. Um, it could have been given to them. That information could have been given to them through an advanced human intelligence or a breakaway society or a non-human intelligence, but it definitely came from somewhere. And uh, Jay, just this always happens when I'm talking to you.
It's my
That I
fault.
just I'll be on a rant and then bloop,
No, they wanted to know
zap.
exactly like what the ins and outs were of the project, but that's
Yeah,
program, but that's fine.
that's not, that is going to be highly classified information that has not been given to me um, by a
And maybe you
whistleblower or
couldn't share,
otherwise.
right? Maybe you can't share.
If I knew something like that, I don't. It there are a lot of factors regarding whether or not I would choose to share. Um, and it would be, what's for the greater good? Why are we hiding it? What are we doing with it? Um, how does this, you know, destabilize our current timeline in the current world that we're in? How does this affect the past? I have understood that we know how to go backwards in time, but that I I've heard it speculated that we have not figured out how to return from that. Um, yeah, but I just I just don't have any information there. I'm really sorry. I know it seems like it because I broke the name on X and I've talked about it, but I've told you just about everything that I know, and
That's
everything else is
fine.
just speculation. Yeah.
I have my own, I have a few questions, but this is something to add on top of it. Sarah was talking about Colonel Corso's book, I think, and his son, talking about how we
Mhm.
lost the war and we went back and we purposely made things right.
Mm. I have not read that. Do you have a
Yeah.
specific title? I've heard. I know I should probably be very versed in some of this, especially, just being in this community. I'm not a hardcore researcher. I'm very much more on the spiritual side, and um, the uh, the notion of whether or not it's technologically occurring. So
No, I understand.
yeah,
We'll just go from whatever you know. I mean, we're here to talk to you. Um,
yeah,
yeah, so alien protocols can go, and maybe Robert, I don't know if Robert wants to expand on that first.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I just wanted to
hey,
expand. So Philip Corso Jr. stated that his father told him that the Roswell crash was actually a time machine that was sent back from the year 2038. Um, so I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit to to add. And according to Philip Corso's Jr., his Philip Corso's son, his interactions with the Air Force confirm that that there's some attempt to complete a time machine by the year 2038 so they can maintain a timeline, and that there are various dystopian timelines where
yeah,
like the Nazis win World War II, or the
hmm,
Chinese, that sort of thing, that they're
Chinese
trying to,
rise, yeah,
trying to prevent from happening. That's it.
nuclear war, solar flares, asteroids, volcanoes,
Well, that kind
insectoids.
well, that kind of falls in with like the idea that the tall grays and I mean the grays and the tall whites are two different Earth timelines battling it out too.
Hmm. I haven't heard that. Now I know that there's conflict for um this this is my understanding at when we start to get into the weeds. I did national intelligence, so I really like to be that eye in the sky where I can look down and get a solid perspective on everything, and then go down into the weeds. But I haven't been like deep in the weeds on a lot of this. But um, oh, shit. What was the question?
Oh, I also want to ask you a follow up to my first question was, did you ever get confirmation that you said the right things and did the right things when you first came out?
Yes, yes, I did. Um, I waited too long to get back. Um, there were a lot of decision making that I would do differently, if I could go back to the beginning. Um, but I didn't know all of the things that I needed to get to where I am now. So, yeah, I feel like I definitely would have listened more to that nudging at me when I was, I don't want to say making a mistake, but when they were telling me, like, this isn't going to turn out. I mean, they just flat out told me one day, this isn't going to turn out the way you want it to. And and I didn't understand exactly what that meant, but later was told that they there was very little chance that when I went back that I was going to find them there. That it was almost like a window that I missed, or something that I missed, and I kind of felt it when it happened, and I just didn't want to believe it, you know. Um, but I did make it back to the property, and there was solid stone where the tunnel should have been. Everything else outside was as I remembered it. Um, the inside of the house was not as I remembered it. Uh, it was almost, there were elements of it that were mirror opposite of how I remember it, the like a fireplace being in the wrong spot, a pillar being in a strange spot, a walkway not being the shape that you remember it, a wall being where there wasn't, you know. Um, and I asked multiple times if they had done any changes inside, and they said that they had not. Um, I asked them specifically if they had made any changes to the walkway from one area to another, and they denied that they had done any renovating. So that's what I know. Um, and yeah, it's been a year ago now.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. Alien Protocols has been very patiently waiting,
Hey,
so thank you, Alien Protocols. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Hey, family, love you guys, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Hi.
Um, hey, nice to hear your voice always.
Oh, thanks.
Do you see any connection? Do you see any connection between SpaceX and Elon's boring company that drills those very large tunnels? And after that, the second question would be, do you think they see the logic in any point the government, in terms of survivability of a catastrophe, in having a scalable saving the population constructions as well that would be constructed? Because the more human minds we have, to deal with problems, the more solutions we might have, innovative solutions that aren't expected, as
Hmm.
opposed to just preserving the cream of the crop.
Right. Well,
Any thoughts?
we can definitely agree on that. I think that especially if and if maybe it's happening already behind the scenes. I'm sure it's a tool, we're going to be using it. But is someone using AI somewhere that is completely devoted to solving this problem and figuring out a way that we can maximize the survival of the human race in the chance of an upcoming catastrophe, which I personally believe that we are facing. And we need that kind of commitment, and I think that AI has gotten to a point where it could probably solve this for us. um, I don't know for sure, but I feel like we have enough minds and enough resources that I mean, we could essentially just all stop daily nonsense and go work in areas where we can develop these underground communities that can sustain life. I mean, we're all, like, we're going to work, we're worrying about, whether or not we've got enough in our bank account for going out to dinner and that new couch we want, or you know, and we've got serious problems that are coming our way. And I just feel like it is a crying shame that the United States government is not being more uh, very clear or at all talking about the fact that we are coming up to some dire circumstances. And I find it like, I would say maybe even uh, derelict of their duty of service to the United States, um, by not involving the people and not giving us all a chance, making us still caught up in this day reality that this stuff just goes on and on forever. When it's super impermanent, and the people who know how fragile and impermanent it are in positions to do something to maximize population and species survival, and they're not. Um, I'm sure that they're pouring more into defense spending and black projects, um, and just continuity of government. And um, I, I'm pretty sure they've just given up the idea of saving the superficial population.
So, Anjali, a great question, Alien, and you can ask a follow-up if you'd like, but I would like to ask Anjali, do you know or do you feel that we kind of have a breakaway civilization, as Richard Dolan would talk about? Is there technology, which I'm sure there is, but to an extent that it would affect all of mankind, let's say an anti-gravity or something along those lines? Do you think we've cracked that? Is there anything you came across in your professional capacity or anything like that?
I've never come across that kind of information in my professional capacity. I can say that, how should I put this? Um,
Well, I'm sure you wouldn't tell us if you did while you were working, but um,
yeah.
I know I'm putting you on the spot. But I mean, a lot of us feel it's there. Some people may know some components are there. Uh, are you of the same mindset as a citizen that we've got components that can help humanity that are hidden deep in those black projects that you were referring to, and or aerospace black projects, private, public, it doesn't matter.
Well, one of the things that, one of the technologies that I've heard that has been held back is, the the medical beds. Um, I think that is our attempt to kind of we're starting with the kind of technology that we need that will lead us to like the illuminated mist light beds. It could be like a first generation that we're getting into this idea of this medical bed, with all of its healing, proponents. Um, and we have stem cell research that should be being, we can do things with stem cells that we should be doing all over the world. We know how to treat cancer. We know how to treat individual, tumors. We have the advanced technology that allows us to use, directed frequency to target down, like millimeter size cancer tumors inside of people. Um, I mean, we can do this stuff, and we don't. We just don't do it. It a lot of the emerging technology that we have that can benefit humanity immediately gets swiped up by the military industrial complex and weaponized. And what does remain of it that is useful to society is oftentimes regulated to be used within military settings before we'll have them out in our sector. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does, and I don't think the way that I'm a big fan of the representative democracy and the government and everything else, but when you I think it was the McCain-Feingold Act, but when you can accept large amounts of dollars for super PACs and things like that, now your representatives are not necessarily working for the people. They're working for those that can give them the biggest check, and that does
Hmm.
not work in the interest of the people. And so that's why, in my opinion, a lot of those things get withheld too. Um, so
Yes,
anyhow,
absolutely. Yeah.
can I ask you another side question to jump topics a bit, and then
Sure.
and if anybody else wants to ask, they can feel free to jump up. Have you ever heard of a program called the Public Acclimation Project?
Public acclamation.
Yes, the Public Acclimation Project. It sounds like that's a no.
Yeah. But my little spidey senses are just tingling because of of the vocabulary there. So what you got?
Yeah. Well, perhaps we can talk about this a different time, but I do
Okay.
a lot, or I've heard from a couple. Well, I shouldn't say I've heard one directly, one indirectly, from AFOSI agents that this project, the part of the, I guess you were calling it soft disclosure,
Mm-hmm.
that's been coming out has been happening since the 80s actually.
Yeah.
Um, and that the particular project name is the Public Acclimation Project.
Well, well, it doesn't
So
surprise me.
no, it doesn't surprise me either. A- and I'm not trying to boost your ego here, Anjali, but anybody of great acclaim, I try and ask them this question
Sure, that's
just to
okay.
see if they've just to see if they've heard it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you answering that.
Yeah, I mean, going back to breakaway, your question on breakaway societies earlier, I don't know if I really ever addressed it, but I feel like that could potentially um, be related to the public acclamation project, um, and how to prepare uh, a society and the public for particular changes that are coming up, and we see it all the time, but so I wouldn't be surprised if there are breakaway civilizations. I mean, I think we have really good evidence of um, s- ad- incredibly advanced societies who can do things that we are not able to do yet, who had, architectural abilities that are far beyond our abilities today, who had philosophical and spiritual and I would say the mystery schools um, were accepted as a part of one's own spiritual growth and teaching us how to use the energy that I have, the energy bubble that we live in, and the electromagnetic magnetic fields that we are producing, and so that we can affect uh, conscious manifestation of the things that we are desiring, and it all starts, with a thought. So since we know that this can happen for us, could we have an advanced civilization that has managed to obscure itself, that is human, that is on a longer, you know, technological track of development? Yeah, yeah, we could. We know that those civilizations occurred, and we recognize the thread of mythology and legend and lore that um, that weaves itself through all those ancient societies. So um, they had mastered technological superiority that we just do not have. And unless something actually occurred where they were actually wiped from the planet, there's a better chance that during whatever was going on, they managed to get off the planet or to go under inside the planet and were not able to reemerge in the way that they thought they were going to, you know, or they're just located
Sure.
off planet, or that they prepared. For all we know, they could have their bases, or their facilities, their habitats in the deepest layers of the ocean that we're just not aware of because they were so much more technologically advanced than we are now.
I completely agree, and I don't want you to reveal sources and methods here, but how heavily does the intelligence community recruit archaeologists or oceanographers, for example? I'd assume that'd be pretty heavy on their list.
Absolutely. If you can name an industry, there's an intelligence officer working in it.
Okay, so there goes broad spectrum across industries, but I guess
Would
do
that
they
be a
lean
focus?
heavier on?
Yeah, there's definitely going
Okay,
to be a focus on archaeology, geology, sociology, uh, cultures, um, past civilizations, political environments, religions, um, and then you go into each society, into their industries, and you're going to have, covert intelligence agents who are there to um, gather and either take a pulse or are there to plant seeds and, you know, uh, working an actual particular program, identifying assets, whatnot.
okay, great. And if you don't mind, I have a question from the audience, if that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, it reads, I heard that you might have been visited by time travelers while you were sleeping when you first started working at the agency. Can you describe what that experience was like?
I had several experiences, and it was pretty intense. They started right after I got to DIA. Um, I was waking up with a a shadow man at the end of my bed. Sometimes he, always like a Men in Black suit, very very well dressed. I would say dapper. Very very well dressed. Sometimes with a hat on, sometimes not. Um, all I could see was that the person was standing there. I would, I would be awakened out of my sleep. I would see them. I would sit up and gasp, and they would blick out. Um, so I would say that their height was probably, hovering around 6 foot, nothing extraordinary, kind of an average, you know, to just slightly above average size. Um, and nothing unusual about the silhouette other than it looked, other than the fact that there was a freaking man in a suit standing at the end of my bed. That was the intense part. And so um, it it happened several times. I did report it to my my direct supervisor in my division. I reported it and um, was just kind of told, okay, thanks, thanks for letting us know. Let us know if it happens again. You know, um,
Okay, so they did no follow-up on it or anything that you know of.
that's right, that I know of.
Wow, wow. And
But who knows what
the reason,
happens by me, reporting that.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, I remember Rick Doty saying that you were contacted by some people that were AFOSI agents at some point in time, and you know, you didn't have an idea at the time
Yeah. Oh, well,
that
that's
that's what
that's
they
great.
were. You
It's always nice to
know.
hear.
Sorry,
I
but
just
that's how
assumed
they
that,
operate, I guess. Huh?
95% of the people that I talk to are, some form of intelligence agents or officers. I have a very difficult
Yeah,
time trusting.
that's one thing I remember from your guy episode. I told you this the other night is that you just assume everybody's working
Yeah.
and just whatever, let them do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Eh, and so your story is very similar to Steve's, who was kind of up here earlier. I know he can't talk, but um, I find Steve's story very interesting
Mm.
as well. And so I wonder if they target certain people when they join certain agencies, or um, this is going to go into the hybrid area.
Hmm.
Are some of the IC communities infiltrated?
Well, I
Um,
can tell you that that's what
yeah,
I have been led to believe. In fact, the beings have communicated to me that we are actually physically related. Like, that I'm related to this family of beings that I met, um, who let me know that, um, I was selected to be born to my mother and, to be on earth because because I have um, the exterior traits that they wanted. Um, so I can tell you that in my in my family, um, some of the characteristics that we find, particularly our on the maternal side, um, is, well, we're all O negative. Okay. Um, we have indigenous and Celtic blood, as far as ancestry. Um, there is autism spectrum on down my maternal line. My mother has been diagnosed with it. My daughter has been diagnosed with it. I was taught very young how to mask it, um, but I was often at DIA, verbally counseled on how to socially interact with people because I was always just so focused on my work. I would walk into somebody's office and just, im- just start talking to them. And maybe they haven't seen me for, 4 days. And I don't even say, hi, how are you? Or whatever. I just go right in. And I didn't realize at the time that, that was part of the autism spectrum that I've always struggled with. Um, it's funny that, I find out more about myself in my 50s than I knew all of my life. It's really something else. So this has kind of been a more recent revelation for me. Um, but so the women in my family are pretty neurodivergent. The boys, not as much. Um, they It really is us ladies. We're very neurodivergent. Uh, we all have seizure disorders or have had, seizures in the past. Um, and um, I just find it interesting how many biological traits that I have found just in me and my daughter and my mother, um, that match a lot of the traits that are known to experiencers and to people who have been told by a non-human intelligence or what appears to be a non-human intelligence that they are a hybrid of their race, that they have, spliced in their DNA, that this is, they're trying to make human bodies that, their consciousness is compatible with, um, that they can put their consciousness in, um, and so, or their race's consciousness. So these people apparently are adept at breeding humans, you know, splicing DNA, implanting fetuses, or excising them. You know, this all has to be true, right? I mean, if they're telling me that they have changed my DNA and that I was placed in my mother because they knew that the traits I had would look more human, then that means that there was this whole set of things that were going on before I was ever even born that they were involved in. And I don't even know at what point I was actually placed in my mother's womb. You know, like, are they telling me that, you know, that they placed me in there when they knew I would look, or did they know by the DNA that it was going to be compatible? I mean, like, at what point? I don't understand. I have so many questions, you know. Um, and I really don't have any of the answers. Um,
Yeah, no, that's a good one. If anybody in the back is having a problem trying to get up as a speaker, keep trying. I think we're having a little issue with bringing people up. Oh,
mm,
here we, so, just it seems to be working for some people and not others. So I apologize. I don't know what's going on. I think Jay just, yeah, but we're gonna work on it here. So,
Brian,
sure,
I
um,
just have a brief question about that, if that's okay, about the genetics, Anjali. Is it okay if I
sure,
a quick one?
yeah.
Have you ever asked, like, done a sequencing on your biological dad to see whether it matched?
No, no, I
Yeah,
have
it would
not.
be interesting.
It
That
certainly would.
that was it.
Unfortunately, he's not present in my life. I could possibly find him, but at at this point we are estranged. So
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Anjali. I
it's
didn't want
okay.
to I didn't want to open up a can of worms, but it is interesting
Nope.
how many experiencers have major unknowns, sometimes even about the genetic identity of their mother. You know,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
common thing.
Well, I do look like my mother's daughter. Um, I definitely do, and my daughter looks like mine. Um, but the beings have said that they have tinkered with our DNA, and I understood that when they were telling me that they were talking about, they were telling me that they did that specifically with me, but they were also telling me that this is done to humanity, like to the human bodies. So, um, and they want us to remember that we are related to them. Um, they've kind of made it that way, haven't they?
Yeah,
I mean, we wouldn't have been related if they didn't tinker. So they did it. They wanted t- to do this. Became related to us. Maybe it's an effort for us to accept them. Maybe it's a consciousness experiment, like they say. I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of implications from being told that, you know, you're a hybrid of, you're part human body, part whatever kind of body that is. I don't even know.
Are you
Yeah.
done, Dumar? Does that answer your question?
yeah, and I didn't want to derail. I just wanted to know
No,
if
you're
you
not
matched him
Oh,
with
derailing.
that.
no, you're not at all. You're not derailing at all.
So, Urs, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, yeah. Hey everyone.
Hi.
Anjali, hi. This is from like a mother's perspective, and you know, I've seen weird stuff in my life, and how does this affect you being a mother, and does any of this like affect your child like negatively, or has it been a positive one?
Um, the only thing that has impacted my children negatively has been outside contact with people from ufology who have, posted personal biographical information about my family online. They that has been a very negative experience, and I take heat for that. You know how it goes. Well, if you hadn't, nobody has ever said this to me. Well, if you hadn't gone out there and told everybody what your real freaking name is, then nobody'd be bothering us right now. And I do have to take responsibility for that. I mean, it's true. But I also cannot be responsible for others' bad behavior. I mean, really, we don't live in a world, I hope. I don't want to live in a world where I can be, blamed for years of bad behavior by people because of something I did in 2021, a mistake I made in 2021. It's got to give. And so, but otherwise, it has it's okay. I am respectful enough not to talk about it all the time. Um, I do affectionately refer to my manted being as Lavi. I know it's in the community. There's nothing I can do about it. So I've kind of embraced it. So at first I was very unhappy about it, but yeah, at some point you just got to let it flow. And if that's the way that it's flowing right now, I don't have a name for the being, so why not just go with this affectionate Lavi? So um, I I don't have any idea why I went that direction. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Also, these beings, are there many of them here, or is one just like the one that contacts you? Are they, because I've never really, it's rare that I've heard of a lavender type being.
hmm
So are there many, and are they like benevolent?
I have only seen one of that race, the mantid. I have never seen another mantid. I've never seen another color of a mantid. That was definitely the only mantid being that I saw.
Don't
Um,
you find it odd that these beings, like the grays, the mantids, tall whites, they all reflect the same kind of, we have those on Earth. We have the grays look like ants or, insects,
mhm.
and the mantids,
Frogs.
if they look like
I don't
frogs.
know.
Okay, I don't know.
Turtles. I don't know. I'm just,
Yeah.
just, yeah.
I have one more. Like, I mean, since they all look similar, like Jay just said, do you think that they might totally look like something else and they're kind of covering because that would be a more, where you might not feel fear, like,
hmm
because they would more look more so like us a little, so we don't feel as much fear when we see them.
Well, I definitely am aware that they can manipulate our, what we're seeing. Okay. Um, whether or not they do call their body an avatar. They call it it's a biotech, and it's their avatar. So are they locally present in that? Is that a biological structure, or is it just like is it the next phase in our revelatory future ARG for all I know, where we decide we all get to pick our own avatar and we get to don it, and is that what I'm seeing? Like, I have no idea, guys. I have no idea. I can just tell you what it looked at, like, tell you what it said to me, tell you what I experienced and felt, and everything that's happened. Boy, I want all of those answers.
Oh, okay. I
But
have one more. Sorry,
hmm,
it's just from
no, that's okay.
last time. I'm sorry. When we talked last, I think a few days ago, you talked about the Council of Ancient Beings. Was this particular entity a part of that council?
I believe so because it has been the primary being that presents itself to me and that was talking to me that day. And they have said that that prior to uh, me this incarnation that that I had been working with them. Okay. Like I don't think I'm a member of that council. I think I'm like a workhorse, you know? Um, and so um, I've always assumed that the lavender being is um, a member of the council, but I guess I don't have any way to verify that. It is definitely the being that was saying hello to me that day. That was definitely talking to me about the council. Um, so maybe a better way for me to say it is that I haven't been given a reason to think that they are not. But I cannot give any kind of definitive on that.
Urs, do
That's
you have
been
a
my understanding.
follow-up?
Yeah. Do you think that like humanity will also become part of that ancient council at some point? Is that where we're headed? Is that why they're here to maybe um you know uh kind of interact with some experiencers like you?
Well, they kind of laugh about this question because, in a playful way, because they say that we're not humanity. That humanity, right now we are having this individualized experience, but when we're done being human and being in these bodies, then we go back to what we are, and that is not human. So it's like this illusion that we're humanity, but it is also what we're here to do, is to kind of trying to form a collective consciousness, that for uh, service to others in a positive orientation, um, and is balanced emotionally, so that we can continue to have this experience and it can continue to escalate, or evolve, maybe would be a better way to say it. So that they can continue to have this consciousness experience, but it won't be us. Like, we'll be off doing something else. It'll be a whole new set of consciousness and kind of like soul growing that's going on through this localized manifestation of consciousness, like this crosswords of consciousness and experience and electromagnetic fields. It's like this perfect cross point, and it creates like that soul, kind of like the little light of light that will hold all of the information of our experiences when we're done.
So we merge
Thank
into
you.
one.
Yeah.
We merge into one eventually.
I think eventually, um, I've never talked to anyone who knew who their creator was. Okay, so it's not like the beings that I have communication with, or and have been with. It isn't that can they know everything. It's just where they're how they're looking and how they're gathering data, how they're watching, how they know everything is happening. Um, they have some hold on um, quantum entanglement that we haven't discovered yet, or that we haven't known how to express in any kind of practical way. Um, I understand from them that they have learned how to express that quite well already.
First, I'm gonna let Buddy go because he keeps dropping, and he's been
Sure.
trying to ask questions. So, and then you can go after. Go ahead, Buddy.
Bless you. Yeah, I keep getting kicked off and
Oh,
unspeakered. Yeah, it's fun. Rick Doty is in the room, and I think that's a special opportunity for you both to perhaps ask each other questions if Rick would be willing to come up. LOL.
you think so, huh? Well, that's kind of hijacking the space, isn't it? For what you're looking for. I would
No,
love at
no.
any time to have a conversation with Rick. And of course, if he wants to come up and talk, that would be quite
But
lovely.
Buddy is a notorious troublemaker. He destroys every single
I can
place.
tell.
Yeah, he comes into.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
can
if I
tell
could
a
just
trickster
jump in
when I
real
see one.
quick. No, I did talk to Anjali earlier this morning and said that Rick might be dropping in, and And Rick, just so you know, you wouldn't be hijacking it. Anjali
No,
said that would be lovely if you want to jump up, Rick. So Anjali said that 5 hours ago
yep,
when we talked. So you're
absolutely.
you're you're more than welcome.
I was just trying to make it clear to Alien Pro down there that he wasn't
Yeah,
going
I
to
know.
hijack the space.
No, 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 no. And I think my whole goal here, once again, is to allow Anjali to actually talk this time around. And I think we've accomplished that for a little over 2 hours here. And I hope that everybody has gotten to listen to her story if you haven't heard it before. And so I'm, I'm, I hope you're happy. I'm happy that we've accomplished that so far. So feel free for anybody to jump up as well. I know that Ursula had her hand up, then Robert. Go ahead, Urs.
So, yeah, I was just gonna go back to what Anjali was saying about that we are not humans after we leave, this place again. So, do you think that when we are having this human experience, and many of these NHI, they abduct and maybe use some people for experiments? Do you think it's because in human form people are more fragile, and when they're out of it, there's something else? Do you think that that's a possibility because, we're so fragile here right now?
Right. Yeah. No, I don't know. Okay. What my understanding is from them is that all consciousness goes through different cycles, including this cycle, this third density cycle. And this is how this this human biotechnology was very specifically designed to give a very limited sensory experience, to grow consciousness, to learn to adapt, to experience something that's very different, and that we get to experience in a linear way, and that is impermanent. Like they know there's a start and a stop, and so um, and it's I understand it as being like levels of consciousness, and that each level is there's a different aspect to it, a different consciousness and conscious density. Like it's almost like the amount of light that we have managed to bring into our bubble that I was talking about earlier. You know.
It almost sounds cool. Like, why is love the biggest motivator? Like, when I think of the most important thing um, in this world for me personally, it would be the love of my family, the love of my little doggy, and, other things as well. But to me, I guess what I've learned is that's the biggest motivator for me. And what are we supposed to learn here?
Oh, I don't know what you're supposed to learn, Jay Just.
So we all come in. So you're saying we all come in with individual lessons to learn to
Like
bring
we come in
back
with
to.
our own localized expression with um, goals to have experiences and that lead to specific outcomes. So we come in here, not quite the blank slate, but really kind of with a plan of what should be going on once we're out of the womb and we start maturing and growing our consciousness. Problem is, this is a really difficult place to grow consciousness. It's very heavy here, and we have a lot of entropy here, which is one of the reasons why it's a great place for an impermanent experience, right? Because you only need it for a period of time, and then it resets, it does its thing, and the next cycle through comes through. Um, and I don't know if I am answering your question. I feel like I'm starting to ramble off, of course.
That's fine. We can go to the next question. Robert has his hand up.
Yep. Dr. Stephen Greer mentioned about 24 interviews at least that he visited a lab near the Mexican border. I think it was located in Arizona that was developing reverse engineered medical technologies during like the early 2000s. And you mentioned earlier in your talk today about some awareness of some things like med beds and stuff. And I was just curious, are
Mhm.
you aware of that facility near the Mexican border? And are you aware from any chatter you're familiar with that of some rollout of those technologies or some at least effort internally to get those out to the public?
I have not. I have not heard anything about that. I know that there are medical technologies that exist and that I'm not seeing in society, but I don't know anything about the effort to do that, to get them into society, which would probably have to include, um, declassifying and revealing some of our technical capabilities that we might not be ready to. I don't know.
Well,
I
Dr.
can't
Greer said,
enlighten anything on that, really.
okay, thank you. Dr. Greer said that the reason that he was provided as to why the technologies couldn't be released publicly is because the technology directly, like if you understand the medical technology, then you'll understand the technology beyond the UFO craft, that it's somehow linked. That if you understand one, you'll understand the other,
Mhm.
and that you can't reveal one without revealing the other. Anyways, I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Absolutely.
And that seems to be what Michael Herrera was saying as well,
Mm,
if we remember him coming out.
I do.
Um, so, Anjali, in any of your experiences, do you think that we, let's say US government or just we as humans in the world as general, do we have the ability to measure consciousness in any meaningful form? Do you think that somebody's cracked the code as to how to, and the only
Do we
reason I'm
have
asking this,
the ability
is
to
it
what consciousness?
quantify or measure
Mm.
consciousness? And I'm sorry, I say a measure very oddly, because then I do believe that you would have the once you can get that wrapped around that we can manipulate it. I know that's kind of an off the wall question, but
Yeah, there are lots of different theories out there regarding where the seat of consciousness is. I don't know if we've actually found it. I I wouldn't know. Unfortunately, it's not something I would know about. I wish.
yeah, it just seems, yeah, yeah, correct. This is always the crack the code type of thing, right? Because you have the out of body
Yeah.
experiences or anything else. It almost seems like consciousness is probably non-local or at least movable, transversible, maybe not able to be ended like your a physical body would be. Um,
Right.
the other thing I've heard is that we have the ability to track remote viewing frequencies.
Hmm?
I don't know if you've heard anything about
Track
this.
remote viewing
Uh,
frequencies.
so let's say that you were remote viewing, let's say the safe at my house. That if you that if you really wanted to, that somebody could pick up on that
Mm-hmm.
and know that the remote viewing's happening.
Mm.
Now I don't know if they could say that if you're trying to find the safe in my house, but
So there's an energy
that they could at least
signal.
pick up.
There's a signal.
That's what I hear. Yeah, so I also hear that obviously each individual person's got their own has their own wavelength, and that can be manipulated.
Mm.
Um, and so I don't know if that's why some remote viewers are better than others because they're closer to a certain a wavelength or
Mm.
frequency. I just if you happened on any of that, I figured I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, and the only thing that I can do is speculate, and I can see how there would be some type of signature, a signal that leaves a residue or that you can measure in some way. I think that most of what we experience, we're going to find out there are technical capabilities behind it that we don't understand these advanced technical capabilities. It seems like some of it's not even science fiction. It's like we just don't even have the mind to try to conceptualize it. It's too complex. It's too far out of our frame of reference.
Yeah, thank you, Anjali. All right, alien protocols. Go ahead.
Thanks, brother. I'm very deep in the remote viewing, community, and a big fan and advocate of remote viewing. And from my understanding, you can't block it, but you can distract a viewer as a strategy. So reading it from another outside signal, I've never heard of that before. But you can imagine if humans can do this, which we certainly, without a doubt, can, then there has to be some mechanism somehow. And in that world, I'd like to ask, have you ever experienced psychokinesis, the ability to connect with matter or machines in any way?
Like are you asking me if I have ever moved something by willing
Yes,
it?
or maybe your subconscious did, and you consider that a possibility.
I don't know. I've never tried to do something like that. So if something like that ever occurred, I wouldn't have known it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Jay Just. Hello.
Oh, my hand's not
I
up.
don't know.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. I see it up, but that's the glitch. One thing.
yeah, and I apologize. We've been having a few glitches trying to get some people up here, and stuff like that. So I apologize to everybody. I don't know. You remember when the space shut down and jumped back on
Yeah.
again? So
Yeah.
that's just part of X, right?
That's right.
Did you want to say something, Anjali, or should we go to Robert?
Oh no, we can go to Robert. That's fine.
Anjali, you just kind of touched on this, but I wanted to just clarify. Are you aware of any technologies that could effectively allow the government to monitor attempts to remote view certain facilities? I only ask this because I've listened to quite a few remote viewers mention trying to remote view different government facilities, and that they were under the impression shortly after remote viewing it that the government knew what they had just tried to do and kindly asked them not to engage in that sort of behavior in the future. So I was just curious if you've had any experience with this personally or aware of any accounts of people trying to remote view, Sandia Laboratory or other places, and being given some message or something not to do this.
I have not heard that. My touch with the remote viewing program would have been just being offered a position, asking if I would like to go to Huntsville and going into remote viewing. That was back in 2009. I am not aware, but I'm not aware of there being a dedicated effort, but I would not be surprised if they were monitoring for psyops, essentially, not psychological operations, but psychic operations.
Got it. Thank you.
So Anjali, they asked you to join the remote viewing program back in '09, huh?
Yes, sir.
So they must have known something about you because and you're probably gonna have to correct me on this, but you were one of the very few females that bounced way up in the ranks where you were.
That's true.
So they must have known something about you initially. Um,
Well, I have a long history that I question often how much they may actually know about me. Meaning, like, how long has this been going on in my life? There are certain demographics that make me stop and ask questions. Like, my first contact was after my mother and father had separated, but it was just down the street, same city. And he was in the U.S. Navy as a nuclear submariner. And I, I had a lot, I have a history that is actually pretty remarkable. I can almost go through it like year by year. And fit it up against a lot of things that I've heard from other people. Everything um, from being in the GATE program and being taken from school for education. I don't really remember much about it. I have some faint memories, but you would think that I would remember more, but I don't. And um, the craft over our home when I was 4, meeting the beings when I was 4, um, and a lot of my personal biographical details when compared up against a lot a a lot of experiencers. There are some interesting intersections. Like, you hear stories about orphanage. I have orphanage stories. I have one, you know, um, and about being, always being in a program that they kind of don't understand that's related to gifted and talented, being picked up by a stranger and taken from their school. I mean, the 70s was a wild time, apparently. You could just do this. Um, and um, Having early contact with a craft or a being, military children with a history of child abuse, usually of a sexual nature, often involving more than one person, very rich people involved who throw these lavish parties and get people addicted to drugs and do unspeakable things and have children there. Um, I've got direct experience of that in my life. It's one of the trauma points that I've been dealing with very heavily this year. Um,
Yeah, that's absolutely horrible, and I'm sorry you had to go through any of that stuff.
well,
That
it's
that that
okay,
stuff drives me absolutely up. Well, no, it's not. Well, it shouldn't be okay in the future, at
right?
least in my
Like, I
opinion.
can't do anything
Um,
about it now.
but
I'm trying to make my peace with it and trying to see, where I have room in my life to forgive. Who do I have room in my life to forgive? Most of the people involved at this point, I haven't even spoken their names in years, except just recently. They're long gone and dead. And they were significantly older and much richer than my mother. And they met her at an AA meeting. She was a recovered alcoholic and drug addict, and this couple um, met her there and um, essentially befriended her. And the next thing you knew, they were providing her alcohol and drugs, and she was coming to these parties, and she was taking me with her. Um, it's it's horrid. It's horrid.
yeah,
It sounds like
it,
some form
it
of
almost
human
sounds like an
trafficking.
Epstein thing. Yeah, absolutely. Ugh.
And they approached her, in a place where she's the most open at that point, which is in AA, where she's trying to right her life. And she was very young. She was in her 20s, and I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with how to forgive that, recognizing that, you know, maybe it wasn't that her going to these parties and, using drugs and alcohol, maybe that wasn't all her fault. Like, maybe she was actually groomed for that. And that's when those things, those details of, well, where did they meet? How did they meet? Um, and, did they ever come back, and go to AA? No. I mean, they were literally there like to recruit people. And so it may have been a deliberate recruitment of my mother. It could have been something attached to the
Yeah.
Navy. I mean, I have absolutely no idea.
And I almost wonder if your meeting at the coffee shop when they took you to the mountains was a deliberate recruitment as well, of a
Mm,
different manner. I'm not trying
mm.
to make the two akin,
Yeah,
but
yeah, I
you know,
understand.
it it may be possible that we're dealing with either really, really smart people, or perhaps there are some hybrids or anything else that have infiltrated certain portions of the government or that have control over it or control over the people.
Hmm.
I find that aspect fascinating.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's some evidence to show it, but not a whole lot yet.
Yeah.
Um, but boy, I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's just absolutely horrible. I'm on the border here in southern Arizona, and there's nothing more than I hate than sex trafficking and anything like that. I have no room for it.
Oh my gosh,
So
I bet you see
I didn't
all
mean to,
kinds of things.
I didn't mean, yeah, I didn't mean to put a bad spin on things here, but
No, no,
yeah.
I don't think you did at all. If anybody did, it was me. But but you hear these experiences from other people. Like, it wasn't until I started sharing the fact that I had ever been put in an orphanage, the fact that I had ever gone to these lavish parties, where these people that were recruiting my mom out of AA and out of her sobriety and drugging her and probably drugging us and, molesting children and having sex with children. Um, uh, it, I mean, I hear that from other experiencers, and I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's related to the phenomena, like, I can't imagine how it would be, or if the phenomena reaches out because of this, this kind of trauma and their compassion to want to heal and and soothe, you know. Um,
Yeah, could I bring up just one question?
yeah.
And I know this is going to be a tough subject, and Jay, just jump in, or Rissa, or anybody at any time. Do you think, and I am obviously a male, but as a female, let's say that you are, and I'm not saying this happened to you, Anjali, but let's say you're raped or molested. Do you think that could be equivalent to an out-of-body experience? That you have to remove yourself from the trauma in order to get away from that person, almost like,
Well, people do,
you know,
women and men, during high trauma scenarios, they
correct,
will
correct,
dissociate.
yeah,
A lot of time, they'll either
yes.
dissociate or they will suppress the memory and block it out themselves.
And so do you think that makes you more susceptible or more apt for any experiences later on, like you had? Do you
Yes,
think that might have been the initial impetus, for example?
I think that it was the initial. I think it was the impetus for my initial contact when I was a child. And they came to me and told me that they were my family because I was about a year and a half into this horrid period, this horrid chapter of my life. Um, and it could, very well be um, that they heard me calling out for help, literally crying from my soul, for someone to save me. And then they came, and yeah, very wild. I have drawings
That's very,
somewhere of the craft that was over our home, the perspective from other people who were there that I showed my drawing to and said, how does this look? And they're like, yeah, that's what it looked like. I'll try to
yeah, I want
post
to
it.
say that's also very similar to Chris Bledsoe and his Crohn's disease. He was in so much pain that he was crying out, and that's when they appeared.
Hmm.
But I just want to say, just real quick, Anjali, this is thank you for sharing all this stuff. You didn't have to do that. And I know that's not anything that we had talked about ahead of
Oh,
time.
it's okay.
Um,
Hmm.
that's, but I think it's probably helping a lot of people in the community right now, by the way.
Yeah, well,
Um,
yeah, I think it's important for me to um, set an example that I am willing to be vulnerable and to be strong and honest about my past, and all of the different factors, because I want to know what the hell is going on. I want a straight answer. And I don't know where I'm going to get it, but I do know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to decide if I do I want to believe these beings, can I? Um, is it safe? Is it safe to believe them, to trust it and move forward with it? You know, it's a day.
yeah, I want to say what you just shared is huge. I mean, I've got two daughters of my own, and it really just pins me down.
Mm.
And it, I hope this helps a lot of people that are listening, especially some of the ladies out there, that if they've gone through stuff like this, that hey, you've got an advocate right here, somebody that's willing to come out there on the forefront, and you should be applauded, by the way.
Oh, well, I don't, I just want everyone to understand that in whatever's happened in their past, they probably, it's probably nothing to be ashamed of. If it was a crime, they've probably already paid their price. And if it wasn't, then it was an experience or a trauma that, we're dealing with. Everybody's got something. And I, I think it's good to be honest, because I feel like altered consciousness is a key component to this, and the way that it looks like Echelon really wants to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes.
Or maybe not.
You got to hit the mute button there, Echelon.
Unmute yourself, buddy. Oh no.
We can drop
Or
him
you know
down
what?
and
Just
bring him back up if he's having issues.
Yeah.
yeah, let's just recycle. And then, I know Rick's listening and may not want to come up, but Rick's got some other stories along these lines that are um, um, really, for example, a Katie Smith is one that Rick's brought up in public before. Um, that's worth listening to, and I think the ladies have a lot more to say on these issues than us guys, and I just want to say once again, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Just paving the way for whoever wants to, talk about it next. Bring it out, bring it out into the open. Nothing to be ashamed of. We didn't do anything wrong, you know.
It didn't go away when I was brought up.
Oh wow.
But thanks so much for the opportunity.
Hi.
And I'm doing my very best to respect the divine feminine in all my shares going forward.
Mm.
But I had something very important to share on the subject of
Oh.
calling out for help as a common theme among experiencers.
Mm-hmm.
The scriptural saying is, if you pray for patience, the angels will give you 1,000 reasons to learn patience.
Mm.
It's also said that nobody can do anything for us that only we can do ourselves.
Mm.
The message in my interpretation is that, as we've been told, we need to become more as individuals. It's not enough to graduate high school. You need to go to college. You need to go to grad school. You need to be a specialist in something. So,
Mm-hmm.
as somebody that went to law school 35 years ago and was read in 40 years ago,
Mm.
um, I can tell you that even doctors have subspecialists that know more than
Absolutely.
general practice doctors. So you've got to stay in school, and you've got to accept that the rules of construction and the way that knowledge is passed from one to another is not like on a silver platter just because we ask
That's
it.
right.
We have to be willing to do the work. We have to accept knowledge in the prescribed manner. And in some cases, like some of the secret societies, accepting that knowledge comes with a threat that if you disclose it improperly, you will be killed.
Yeah. Yeah. Heavy stuff.
That's why I was tapping the
Well,
button, because I feel so compelled at this point in time to keep sharing with the American people. I just left a space where I was recognized and given the time to spew my perspective. So I don't want to monopolize. If anybody has a question for me, I can tell you I have about a dozen kernels of truth around the phenomena that were delivered to me by a retired Army G6 Command Sergeant Major of the Army about 40 years ago when I was read in. So I am a vessel of the American heritage experience, and I would love to share what I know about the phenomena with you guys.
well, I would probably argue that nobody should be killed over any of this information. I think that that's antithetical to what we should be
Well, I can
striving
give you an
towards. And I've
example.
always
I
thought
can give you an example.
that
The plans to build a
y-
microwave rifle so that you can cook your neighbors through the walls of your house would put you in legal trouble for a reason.
well, you don't want to be microwaving your neighbors. And look, I understand that there's execution clauses and everything else and all this, and I just think that there are probably certain reasons for some of it. But I think most of us are here because when I say they, the government, specifically from the executive branch,
Well, it's a
could
government
at
by the
least
people for the
reveal
people. So you're talking about yourself and your friends, neighbors, and family. Let's get that straight.
in a representative democracy, yes, that they could reveal the existence of the
George
extraterrestrials,
H.W. Bush was alleged to have been
and not
overheard saying he's seen little
one
green
second,
men.
Echelon, please. Echelon,
What?
we're just 1 second,
All
please.
right.
That they could reveal the existence of it without revealing the technology. I think that's something that most people agree on.
Well, that may very well
Go
be
ahead.
true, and I understand the distinction you're drawing. Private proprietary subject matter like patents and trademarks and the intellectual property around devices and technology aside, I can tell you that the crop circle modality of the cymatic circle represents a frequency, and that frequency is a key to our understanding of the many civilizations that are coming here.
Yep. No, and I appreciate that. I think it may be slightly out of bounds. But
Yeah,
I
I'd
don't know if
really like to.
Anjali wants to jump on any of that.
No, but I would like to talk with you outside of the space echelon. Uh, so I'm going to give you a follow back, and maybe you could DM me, and we could carry on a conversation about what you
Yeah,
want to
I've been
discuss here.
following you for quite a long time, ma'am.
Yeah, I understand that, but there are quite a few people, not very many. I don't, but 10,000 is a lot to keep up with, and
Sure, sure.
so I just gave you a follow, and if you'd like to DM me, we can talk. I would like that.
Roger Wilco. Absolutely.
Awesome.
I appreciate the invitation to engage with anybody on the subject. I will say that at some point I'll point you to a 200-page book that I wrote with the help of ChatGPT. I started writing about 10 years ago, and it was really choppy and uncoordinated. And recently I used ChatGPT with a free account. I only used the 3.5 model, but it helped me tie up some strings and some things that I had suggested to it, and it came up with some really interesting conclusions. I'll share one with you real quick. One has to do with mad cow disease, Jakob syndrome,
Yeah.
and the nature of RFID technology motivation. So the ability to move an object by radio frequency. These microscopic bone meal prills that find their way through the food chain into humans' brains could turn our brains to Swiss cheese by electromagnetic influence. So certain frequencies that are known to mankind, and thus mad cow disease is very carefully tracked by all Five Eyes and now 5E. It's not
Mm-hmm.
Five Eyes anymore. It's now called 5E.
Mm.
Um, these 5 governments all monitor very, very closely incidents of mad cow disease in the food supply, because they're trying to protect us from something so hideous and horrible that it should give you all chills.
No, Echelon, I'm with you. It's it's very scary stuff, but I think what we should do, if you want to DM Anjali, or you can DM myself or anybody else, and we can give a look at
And the
that stuff.
reverse is true.
Um, well,
Please
but
visit my page, my X account,
yeah,
and look through the media. There are images that you won't find anywhere else.
hold on, but it would have to be a separate space at this
Fair
point.
enough. Fair enough. I
Um,
appreciate the
yeah,
opportunity.
yeah, yeah.
You've all been very
Absolutely. Thank
kind.
you for coming up. Yeah, no, this is a great group of people. Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad to have
I
met you.
I appreciate it. So Anjali, um you visited an underground base or a mountain base, whatever you would like to call it. And I know we briefly touched on the possibility that we've got a lot of underground bases. I know, for example, down here in Arizona, um, there are 3 Air Force bases, one down at Fort Huachuca that's got a large chunk in the mountain carved out. Um, I'm not going to go any more into that, but um, are you aware of any other underground NHI bases that people have told you about, or anything else? Oh, did I just explain my whole question while I was muted?
Nope, I heard you. I forgot that I was muted.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm starting
Sorry.
to get tired, so I think I'm gonna need to wrap this up. And
Yep, yep.
uh, but I have heard of there being several underground bases, and the beings have said that they use what I would consider like holographic technology to uh, to secure their their entrances to their underground facilities. Meaning we would look at it and we wouldn't see it because they have used some kind of holographic or hologram technology, and they use sound like frequency to make you feel uncomfortable enough that you just naturally want to go away. Like you get the creeps and you're like, wow, this doesn't feel right. Yeah, something's wrong. This place is really off. I mean, raise your hand if you've ever been out in the forest and you suddenly feel like, whoa, something's weird. Like, it activates something in us. So, of course, it could be, it could be a fear response. Because we're picking up on signals from a predator that we don't realize is in the area. Um, and that could be the same thing, the same type of um, response that we have. But it's my understanding that we use sound frequency, or they use sound frequency to get us to feel uncomfortable. But we could walk right past an entrance to where they are without seeing it if we can stay.
And not
Yeah,
even know it.
if we could stand
Yeah.
the vibratory anomalies that we'd be experiencing.
No, I think I am in agreement with you. I think instinctual a priori knowledge is probably more along the lines of a telepathy or something else that we've got connected in our brains via some frequency. Yeah.
Definitely.
So in the interest of Anjali's time, does anybody else on the panel have any more questions that they'd like to ask, or anything else? Otherwise, I think we can shut it down for a Sunday and everybody can go enjoy the last part of their weekend.
Oh, can I ask a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, of course, Ulrich.
Anjali, I have, well, 2 questions. One, what is your have you considered putting the beings that you're in contact with through a test to prove their trustworthiness to you? And the second one is, what is your best understanding of their orientation toward disclosure at large? Where does it align with, and where is it at variance with how the government is going about disclosure?
Anjali, I think you're muted again.
Sorry about that. I was. Gosh, it's 3 times today. um, First, I would say that the I feel like just the very idea that we are seeing a peak in experiencers having contact, and contactees and abductees coming forward with their stories, and the slow drip of disclosure that we're getting, and the interference that we're getting, that's all part of the process of our working through the situation. And that the beings themselves are proponents for disclosure, and they are, um, it behooves them for us to consciously prepare for the type of interaction and the kind of experiences that we're going to have with them, so that we're not shocked later. Like, this is really, we each individually have to, find some kind of relationship spiritually, with the phenomena, some theory of everything, because we have to garner some, essentially, build gratitude, which elevates our conscious awareness, and prepares us more for a widespread contact scenario. So,
Sorry, are they like catastrophic disclosure like you and I?
my understanding is that it will be because of whatever is coming, that they will have full contact with us. Yes. I mean, that seems to be, it's almost like, if I could surmise it, in a sentence: wake up, sleepyheads, um, there's a fire outside. We don't, the house could catch on fire. Come on, wake up, wake up. It's kind of that feeling.
And why aren't they banging down the door, I guess is sort of what I'm getting at.
I think they are banging down the door.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Doomer. And I think we're going to close it down. Anjali's been extremely generous with over 3 hours of her time. And
Oh my
what an incredible
gosh.
story. Yeah, I know. And of all the interviews that I've watched over the years and in preparation of this, Anjali, you talked about a lot more than I've ever heard you talk about. And I just want to say, and I think I speak for a lot of people here, that I really, really appreciate it. And I could tell that a lot of it came from the heart, and
Absolutely.
it's
It's my pleasure.
it's
I,
yeah, and I hope it helps a lot of people, by the way. I think
me
it will.
too. I just want to normalize, destigmatize and normalize conversations like we've had today. Just whatever stigma, whatever fear that you have attached to your narrative and to your history, that you can just let it go and admit, what I don't mean say admit, but talk about, open up to, others, and build a community, and recognize. I mean, it's like lifting, a bunch of heaviness off of you when you find that courage to come forward and say, "Hey, no, this happened to me, and I may not know everything that it means, but this is something that I have to pay attention to, and maybe you should think about it a little bit too."
Yes, very well said. I don't do a lot of interviews. I'm not good at them, but I choose my
This was
people carefully. And
great.
Anjali, you're one of the great ones. So
Oh, thank you
I
so
just want to say
much.
once again, thank you again. Thank you, Jay Just, for co-hosting. Do you have any final thoughts, Jay Just, or
Oh, it's always a pleasure to talk with Anjali. I always feel like she's you know, she's open and tries to be as honest as she can with what she feels. So thank you for coming and speaking with us, Anjali.
Oh, thank you so much, Jess. It's always a pleasure to be in a room with you too.
All right, so with that said, I'm going to wish everybody a good weekend. Thank you once again, Anjali, for joining us, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Just, and thank you to all the speakers and everyone who's listening. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can connect again on some of these topics, you know, in other spaces. So take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Great space, Brian, Just, Anjali.